Thank you so much. How beautiful. A man left from work on a Friday afternoon, totally oblivious that it was Valentine's weekend. And rather than going right home, he decided to stay out the entire weekend playing, hanging out with his buddies and his friends, circulating his entire paycheck. When he finally made it home, he was confronted by his worried and angry wife, who yelled at him for hours and hours and because of his actions. And finally, his wife stopped nagging and simply asked, "Now, honey, how would you like it if you didn't see me for 2 or 3 days?" And the man replied, "Well, sweetheart, I would be okay with that." Well, Monday went by and he didn't see his wife. Tuesday went by and he didn't see his wife. Wednesday came and went and he still didn't see his wife. And finally, on Thursday, the swelling went down just a little for him to see his wife out of the corner of his left eye. Oh, Lord, please forgive me. Oh. Y'all should pray. You know, the internet has so much. These are not originals. I could not take credit. I'm really not a jokester, you know. All right. Happy Valentine's. So, as many of you are aware, I know that in sharing this, there will be many who are aware, if not all. The legend has it that approximately 250 years after the birth of Jesus, there was a priest by the name of Valentine who lived in Rome. During the time that Claudius was emperor of Rome, a.k.a. Claudius the Cruel. You might have heard of that. It says Claudius wanted a big army, so he thought that men should volunteer to serve the army. But the men were not excited about this invitation. In fact, they didn't want to leave their wives, didn't want to leave their families, didn't want to leave their girlfriends, their children, didn't want to leave their loved ones, their homes. So they refused to volunteer. Well, Claudius the Cruel was so angry that he issued a decree saying that there would be no more weddings, no more marriages in the land. Can you even imagine something like that craziness? Well, Valentine was totally against this because he loved performing ceremonies. In fact, that was one of his favorite priestly duties. So in secret, he continued to conduct, this is the legend, conduct wedding ceremonies. And it says that while he would be meeting with the couple performing these ceremonies, he would whisper. And as he's whispering, he would listen intently for footsteps just in case the soldiers came by. And one day, as he was performing the ceremony, whispering, he heard footsteps at his door. And sure enough, the soldiers entered. The couple escaped, but supposedly Valentine was imprisoned and sentenced to death. Well, when the young people heard of this, of his imprisonment, they showed up at the jail, with flowers and notes and all manner of gifts, and their appreciation to suggest that they too believed in love. And it says one young lady, the daughter of the prison guard, was able to get in and have some quiet moments with St. Valentine. And it says that for hours on end, they would talk. And this young lady told him, well, she really believed in what he was doing and that it was the right things to go against Claudius' decree. And it suggests that on the day that Valentine was to die, he left her a note thanking her for her friendship and loyalty. And he signed it, "Love from your Valentine." And that note supposedly started the custom of exchanging love notes on Valentine's Day. It was written on the day that he supposedly died, February 14th, 269 AD. How many of you knew that? Of course you knew. Y'all didn't know that? That's why you should keep coming to Unity. We love learning, don't we? Yeah. So as we celebrate Valentine's Day, and we honor this first Sunday of the Lenten season. And it's a very spiritual journey, this time of self-examination, this time of looking within the self to prepare the self for this great awakening of the soul, and what the great mystic Howard Thurman calls the creative encounter with God. That this Lenten season, which is symbolic, the 40 days in the wilderness that Jesus experienced, where he met the ultimate overcoming. He had to reconcile the things within his own soul. So 40, as we understand, anytime we attach a 0 to a number, it suggests completion. So 40 is a completed cycle. And during this time of Lent, we are here at Unity Church of Hawaii, we are being very conscious of our thoughts and our words. Some of you attended the Ash Wednesday service where we were given these Lent reminders. Let's see them. Let's hear them. Come on. Who does not have, you don't have a Lent reminder? Raise your hand if you don't have one. And this is to remind us for every time, because we are fasting, it's a time of fasting and praying. We are fasting from negativity, from negative thoughts, negative words, negative reactions. And every time we catch ourselves having a negative thought or saying something negatively, we are to remind ourselves that this is Lent. And we are not doing that during this period. So if you do not have your Lent reminder, I will be happy to share with you a Lent reminder at the close of service. And this is so important because we are intentional about our own spiritual path and spiritual journey. For Emily Cady says it, that this is the path that every individual, every human being must make this effort. It is the effort towards realizing his or her inner nature. Emily Cady is the author of Lessons in Truth, for those of you who don't know. And to understand their true identity. Thank you very much. This is also the path of the mystics. Maybe that's a mystical experience. All right. Maybe that's a mystical experience. Now, where were we? Okay. The mystics are those, and so we're talking about the mystical marriage this morning, and that's where I'm compelled to go in it. Some of you might have heard and entertained that idea, the mystical marriage, and I pray that we hear it, experience it, feel it in a new and profound, thank you very much, a new and profound kind of way. It says, mystics are those who seek a direct experience of the presence of God. Mystics, a direct encounter with the presence of God. And in that definition, I would imagine that there are a few mystics in here this morning. A direct experience with the presence of God. Mystics are those who yearn to know God and to see God and to be and become one with the divine, one with God now. They are students of the soul's intent on their spiritual quest. It says mystics, their lives and teachings are the road maps that lead scientifically to the summit of being mystics. The aspiration of every mystic is one and the same, union with God. Mysticism is a vital element, and please don't be alarmed by that expression. And we're going to hear in just a little while how mysticism, this vital element of every religion, is ultimately there are principles on which every faith and religion has been founded. But what's often the fact is that it's been so discarded or hidden from the masses. The word mysticism is thought to derive from the Greek word meaning to close the eyes and the lips. To close the eyes and the lips. So if you experience over the next, during this Lenten season, individuals who are just refusing to talk or to even look, they might be practicing mysticism. They're just ignoring you, they might be practicing mysticism. The mystics were those who promised to keep secret the rituals of their religion. Mystics taught their pupils to shut their students, their devotees, to shut their eyes, close the door to the eyes of the external world, and turn within in profound contemplation to discover the mystical truths. And you've heard that. We do that every Sunday. The reason we're taught to close the eyes and to go within is to develop the inner spiritual ability to hear and to see. Closing the eyes meant that they had to go to a plane of consciousness apart from the conscious mind, the concrete mind. So as we're dealing with the mystical marriage, and we understand that the mystical marriage, how many of you are married? Raise your hand. You're happily married. You should, for those who are single, you should make some noise that you're happily married, because a lot of people love to be where you are right now. Happily married individuals, raise your hand. All right, married individuals, just raise your hand. Those who want to be married, raise your hand. Okay, I'll stop right there. The mystical marriage, friends, is the merging of, it's been said as to be the merging of our humanity with our divinity. And when this marriage occurs, you really can't tell where the humanity ends and our divinity begins. There's a merging within the soul. It is an agreement, and many of you might be familiar with Miguel Ruiz's book, The Four Agreements. It is the agreement of the soul to come into union, to come into oneness. And this is the ultimate longing of the soul, as many of the church leaders stated. It is the longing to return to our first love, the first love. Not the love of our childhood or, of preschool, high school, college, none of that. But the first love, returning to the first love before we even incarnated in this experience. The mystical marriage transcends the human interactions. Unlike I shared the earlier service, and growing up, there was this couple in the neighborhood. I won't say where in this service because it's a live stream. In the neighborhood where I grew up, and I will say they lived to our left. There were neighbors who lived to the left, maybe about a quarter of a mile away, and we had neighbors to the right. And at least 2 or 3 times a week, I had this idea of marriage and all, and mystical marriage. And 2 or 3 times a week, you'll either see one time the husband running down the road and the wife running behind him because he did something that just didn't sit well with her. The next day, you would see the wife running down the road and the husband running behind her because she did something that didn't sit. Then you'll see both of them running. I don't know if they're running from the pets or what, but they were both running. And I'm like, well, marriage, this mystical marriage that transcends the human connection, yes, which is so essential, but there first has to be, and whether it's in this lifetime or in another incarnation, that the soul comes into union, back home to the first love, before we even incarnated, as we mentioned. The common prayer amongst the mystics is, I am oblivious to everything but that anxious longing of seeing, experiencing, and knowing God. That's the mystic prayer. It says the legendary spiritual master of ancient wisdom, Saint Germain, and you've heard of that name. Saint Germain ultimately framed this idea of the mystical marriage. He revealed it as this. It's the unveiling of the Son as the personal or inner Christ. It is the image and likeness of the divine within us. That when that is unveiled, we get to tap into the mysteries that Paul talked about and that some of these other church leaders talked about. It says the mystical marriage, according to Saint Teresa, and you might have heard of Saint Teresa, the prominent Spanish mystic. She says that she referred to it as the 7th resting place or the interior castle. That the mystical marriage opens us to a wisdom, to information, to insights, to mysteries that we might not be so cognizant of. Just listen to what the mystical marriage, how some of the church leaders defined the mystical marriage. It says, authors of the Catechism of the Catholic Church, listen, gathered some of their more prominent reflections on this concept in their response to this question: why did God become man or human? And it says that they referred to 2 Peter, first of all, chapter 1, verse 4. This is the mystical marriage. It's really stepping into our divinity. It says, the Word became flesh to make us partakers of the divine nature. Saint Irenaeus says, for this is why the Word became man or human, and the Son of God became the Son of man, so that human, by entering into communion with the Word of truth and thus receiving divine sonship, might become the Son of God. But listen, it's going to become very clear. One saint says that, in defining this mystical marriage, says, for the Son of God became man so that we might, hold on. Don't be alarmed. I'm just sharing with you what the saint said. For the Son of God became man so that we might become God. That's what they said. Then St. Aquinas says, in referring to this mystical marriage, it is the only begotten Son of God wanting to make us sharers in this divinity, assumed our nature so that he made man might make men gods. What kind of carrying on is that? And we don't hear about that, do we? But what we do hear about is that we are less than, that we're the, worm of the dust, or we're not worthy. But here in some of these writings, you heard of St. Augustine, right? Says that if we have been made the sons of God, we have also been made gods. What kind of carrying on is this? Now, have you heard this in the messages, in the preaching? What about John Calvin? Have you heard of John Calvin, one of the Protestant reformer, who says the end of the gospel is to render us eventually conformable to God, and if we may so speak, to deify us. Martin Luther, you heard. Martin Luther, leader of the Protestant Reformation, said God pours out Christ over us and pours God's self into us. God's self into us and draws us into God's self so that God becomes completely humanified and we become completely deified. I didn't say it. I'm just reading what's in what they said. That we become completely deified. Now this is the founder of the Protestant Reformation. Think of the Lutheran Church, Presbyterian, all of the Protestant churches. This is what the founder is saying. How come we haven't heard any of this? I didn't grow up hearing any of this. Maybe you did. It says, everything is altogether one thing, Martin Luther said. Everything is altogether one thing, and that one thing is God. And that one thing is Christ in you. This is the bottom line message of unity. If you had to sum up the unity teachings in one statement, friends, if you don't get anything else out of unity, the one statement that will sum up all of the teachings of unity is this one passage from sacred text that says, Christ in you, God in you, is your hope of glory. Every message, every class, every song, every service is to bring us back to this one reality that God in us, Christ in us, is our hope of glory. And as the soul opens and embraces this awareness, this truth, then the mysteries of life, they are revealed very quickly. The three ways of the mystical marriage. Now, some of you, just like me, probably you're asked often, are you married? Are you married yet? How many of you get that question? Come on, be honest. For those of you who have to give a response to that, I have an answer for you today. I want you to get it. So when you ask, yeah, and I got the bling to show it, all right? It's on. I've got it on my finger. 3 ways of moving into the mystical marriage, which is the oneness, unity with God. The first step requires that we overcome the outer world. And this is why every time we go into meditation, we are invited to simply close the eyes. I encourage you during the remainder of this Lenten season, at least one evening out of the week, that we overcome the world by shutting the door to the outer world. No CNN, no ABC, just one evening until Easter, one evening a week. No ABC, no CBS, just turn off the TV, turn off the radio. I dare you to turn off your iPad, no Facebook, one evening, and simply say, I'm turning within. I'm seeking the true power. And I'm going directly to the source. And friends, when we go within, we become the news. You become ABC. You become CBS and NBC. And then you become the news that gets reported in your universe, in your world. The second thing that we're called to do in moving into this mystical marriage is to communicate, to commune. And there are some services, contexts where you go and the sacraments are made available every Sunday. We make the sacrament of communion available as well. Communing with God, communing with Spirit by giving quiet moments in meditation. That's communion. We do this in remembrance of thee. This is what we commune. And it doesn't have to be here at 3608 Diamond Head Circle to do it. And the third thing is to surrender our personal agenda. Make that second place and put God's agenda first. That as we talked about last week, we submit. We submit to this, we give way to this mystical encounter. So that when we hear of these mysteries, they're no longer foreign to us. We don't resist them. There might be a natural resistance to these truths. So when you're asked the question, are you married? Then you can say, I am. When they ask you, are you engaged? Are you hooked up? Are you connected? You can say, I am. Because the question and the answer is not very far apart. It says, for I am, you can decree, I am. Ultimately, the question, are you married? Are you connected with God? Then you can shout it out, I am, from the mountains to the seas. Are you hooked up with pure spirit? You can shout, I am hooked up. Are you connected with source and power? Your response should be, I am, and you say it loud and proud. Are you connected with the power that created this universe? Do you know that this power is moving in and through you? Do you know that it's working in you? Are you connected with it? You can shout from the very depths of your soul, I am, I am, I am, I am. And the mystical marriage will empower you to stand in that truth. God bless you.